Hi, so this week I spent most of my time on noise generation. Essentially what I'm doing is creating some random numbers with specific properties. For instance, if I wanted to create a bitmap that's random, I could go and generate each pixel and just generate a random number between 0 and 1. And for 0, paint the pixel black. For 1, paint the pixel white. And anything in between would be a shade of gray. And I'd get something that looks a bit like this. But that's not very interesting, right? There's not a whole lot you can do with something like this. So imagine if instead of having each pixel, we spread it out and you have points that are fairly far away, and then all the points in between, you just make a gradient from one point to the next. That's what's called lattice noise. This is an example of that. You can start to do a little bit more with something like this. Played around a little bit with it. For example, here's a blue and a green and a red lattice noise, and you can combine them all together and get this kind of interesting looking pattern here. They don't always have to be used exactly like that. This is actually created by a bug that was in my code, but I thought it looked kind of neat. But it's a good example of how you can create different kinds of patterns and things with that. I decided to try to put it on the grass tiles because if you remember from the first of the video, each of these tiles are just random, just totally random. And you end up with this tall grass next to the totally bare ground, and it looks kind of weird. So one way that you can use noise map is for the height of the grass, and it kind of creates a more smooth, gradual effect from the bare ground to the taller grass. Here I didn't really like it quite as much, so you can kind of change the way you implement it a little bit. I overlaid the coordinates of the tiles, used that to query the noise algorithm to find out what the value would be for each tile. This is what it looks like if you sample the map more frequently, but I really thought it should be more spaced out. I did a few other things to it, like made a number of answers be bare ground and another number of answers be the tallest grass, so you have the larger spaces of the tallest grass and larger spaces of bare ground. But I thought this looked pretty nice, especially considering that noise algorithm was pretty naive. So it's interesting that it gave such a nice effect here. But I'm really making the noise algorithm for the height map. So what I ended up going with is called midpoint displacement. It's a little bit like lattice noise, where you randomize a point in each corner and create this sort of gradient. Then you'll pick a point in the middle of each of those points, and then you start with that gradient, and then you move it up or down a little bit. And then you just keep doing that and doing that and doing that until you've done every point on the whole map. In my case, instead of starting with a square, I start with a rectangle, so I actually have a few extra points that I start with, and then I'll also wrap it. So a lot of times when I'm requesting adjacent points, I'm looking at a different point on the map than you would usually look. And this is what I ended up coming up with for the height map. The interesting part about this is that I wrapped it in a kind of an interesting way. So it does wrap on the right side to the left side, just like you would expect. But the north-south wrap's a little bit interesting. So the south wraps with the south, and the north wraps with the north. So if you go up at a point that's 25% of the way across on the north side, you're going to wind up on a point that's 75% of the way across. It just wraps like plus 50%. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's a little bit more like a globe. I spent a long time trying to figure out how I wanted to do this map, and that's kind of what I came up with, and I think it'll work pretty well. That actually took quite a while to get all the bugs worked out of that, because it's a little bit weird. The algorithm's not really meant for something like that. Actually, it's not even meant to make a rectangle. You should always be a square that's of a dimension of 2n plus 1, and I had to kind of mess with that a little bit to get it to work right. So thanks for watching. Next time, hopefully I'll get the height map actually implemented and have a little bit more interesting of a world to look at than this flat plane with different grass, but I think it's an improvement over the last time.